My son had a housewarming party for 60 people, and I wasn't one of them. I found out from a text message. 3 days later, I went to the bank. That was the last time I did anything for him without being asked. My name is Raymond Hollis. I'm 67 years old. I spent 38 years as a licensed electrician in Cincinnati, Ohio. And if you want to know what that looks like, I'll tell you it looks like your knees giving out at 52. It looks like a left shoulder that clicks every time you reach above your head. It looks like a retirement party in a break room with sheet cake and a card everyone signed, and then you drive home alone because your wife died 11 months before you could retire together. Linda passed 3 years ago. Heart failure, the doctors said. As if a heart just stops working for no reason. As if 31 years of loving a woman and building a life together could just reach a quiet ending without any explanation. She was 64. She had plans. She had a whole list on the refrigerator, things she wanted to do once I hung up my tool belt. Travel to Ireland, see the Grand Canyon, take a cooking class, learn to paint. That list is still on the refrigerator. I haven't been able to take it down. We had one child. Our son, Kevin. Kevin is 32 now. He works in marketing at a tech company in Columbus. He has good teeth and a firm handshake and a way of talking that doesn't sound anything like Cincinnati anymore. He sounds like somewhere else. Somewhere cleaner, maybe. Somewhere with a better zip code. Linda used to joke that we raised him so well he outgrew us. She meant it sweetly. I think about that now, and it doesn't feel sweet anymore. When Kevin was 9 years old, a transformer blew on our block and took out power for half the street. I suited up, went out in 17-degree weather, and fixed it myself because I knew how and because I couldn't stand the idea of my neighbors sitting in the dark. Kevin watched from the front window. When I came back inside, he ran at me and grabbed my legs and said, "Dad, you're like a superhero." Linda was standing in the kitchen doorway smiling at us. I still think about that moment when I need to remind myself that it was real, that it all really happened. I paid for Kevin's college. Every semester, every textbook, every dorm fee, every meal plan. I picked up weekend jobs on top of my regular work to cover it. I refinished basements. I rewired garages. I did things a man my age had no business doing on a Saturday in August because my son was going to have a degree and he was not going to start his adult life buried in debt. That was the deal I made with myself when he was born. My kid would have what I didn't. He graduated with no loans and a job offer. I cried at that graduation. Linda cried harder. We drove 4 hours each way and sat in those plastic folding chairs in the heat, and we were so proud it hurt. After he moved to Columbus, things were fine for a while. He called on Sundays. He came home for Christmas and Thanksgiving. He was the Kevin I knew, a little more polished, maybe. A little more careful with his words, but still my kid. Still the boy who used to fall asleep on the couch watching football games and wake up halfway through claiming he'd seen the whole thing. Then he met Ashley. I want to be careful here, because I don't think Ashley is a bad person. I think she's a person who knew exactly what she wanted and had never in her life been told she couldn't have it. Her father is a real estate developer. Her mother sits on 3 charity boards. They winter in Hilton Head. They have that particular kind of confidence that comes not from doing things, but from never having had to worry about what happens if things go wrong. Kevin brought her home for the first time about 2.5 years ago. I cooked. I made the pot roast Linda used to make every Sunday, with the potatoes and the carrots and the way the gravy gets thick and dark if you let it go long enough. I set the table properly. I ironed a shirt. I was nervous in a way I hadn't been nervous since asking Linda's father for permission to marry her. Ashley was polite. She complimented the house. She asked about the neighborhood in the way people ask about things they don't actually want to know. When she shook my hand, she smiled with her mouth but not her eyes. And then she looked at my hand for just a moment. Just 1 second too long, and something moved behind her expression. She recovered fast. She was too well raised to show it plainly. But I saw it. A man who has been reading job sites and weather forecasts and the faces of building inspectors for 38 years learns to see things other people try to hide. After dinner, Kevin helped me clean up while Ashley took a phone call in the living room. I asked him how he liked the pot roast. He said it was great, Dad. Really great. Then he said quietly, She's used to a different kind of cooking. I let that sit there between us for a moment. I didn't say anything. I just kept rinsing the plates. The wedding was 8 months later. I was invited. I want to be clear about that. I was there. I sat in the third row on the groom's side. I wore the suit I'd bought when Linda and I went to her niece's wedding 6 years ago. It still fit, mostly. I'd lost some weight since she passed. Ashley's family filled one entire side of that church. There were aunts and cousins and family friends who'd been coming to the same country club since 1987. There were people there who owned buildings. Her father walked her down the aisle in a custom suit, and when he got to the front, he shook Kevin's hand like he was closing a deal. The reception was at a venue I couldn't have afforded to rent for my own retirement party. There were centerpieces taller than I am. There was a band, a real band, not a DJ. Ashley's father gave a toast that lasted 11 minutes. I know because I timed it. He talked about Kevin's ambition, his drive, his vision, how proud he was to call him a son. He said he had no doubt Kevin would do great things, especially with the right support behind him. Then the best man spoke. Then Ashley's college roommate. I watched the clock. Nobody called on me. Nobody handed me a microphone. Kevin glanced at me once from the head table, and I smiled at him, and he looked away. At the end of the night, Kevin hugged me and said, "Thanks for being here, Dad." Like I was a guest. Like I was someone who had driven up from out of town and needed to be thanked for making the effort. I drove home alone on the highway at midnight. I kept the radio off. After the wedding, the calls got shorter. The visits stopped. Ashley and Kevin had a life in Columbus. A real life. Dinners and friends and weekends that filled up fast. I understood it. I told myself I understood it. Young couples need their space. You can't hold on too tight or you push them away. That's what everyone says. But Linda was gone, and the house was too quiet, and Kevin was all I had left of the family we'd built together. So when the Sunday calls dropped to twice a month, I didn't say anything. When Christmas that year got shortened to a single day instead of the usual 4 or 5, I bought a smaller turkey and told myself it was fine. When Kevin started answering the phone in a lower voice, almost a whisper, like he was taking the call in another room, I told myself he was busy. He probably was. He probably was. Busy. About 18 months after the wedding, Kevin called on a Tuesday afternoon, which was unusual. He said things were tight. He and Ashley were looking at apartments. The rent in Columbus had gotten crazy. They needed a little breathing room. He wasn't asking me for anything, he said. He just wanted me to know. I called him back the next morning and told him I would send $550 a month. Not a loan. A gift. He said, "Dad, you don't have to." I said, "I know I don't have to." He said, "Thank you." And he sounded like my son again when he said it. The old way. The way that reminded me of him watching from the window in the cold. I set up the automatic transfer that same week. That was 22 months ago. Let me tell you something about being 67 and alone. The days have a shape you don't expect. You wake up early because your body doesn't sleep the way it used to. You make coffee. You stand in the kitchen for a few minutes before you remember that nobody else is going to walk in. You check your phone. You watch the news. You do whatever errands need doing. Grocery store. Pharmacy. The hardware store. Because there's always something around the house that needs a small fix, and you're the only one there to fix it. You have dinner at 6. You're in bed by 9:30, and you wait for the phone to ring. Not in a desperate way. Not sitting there staring at it. But somewhere at the back of everything you're doing, there's a low hum. A frequency you can't turn off. Waiting for your kid to call and say, "Hey, Dad, how are you doing?" Just to know you're still there. Last January, I fell off a stepladder in the garage. Nothing serious. I landed on my right side, bruised 3 ribs, scraped up my elbow. I lay on the concrete floor for a few minutes, just getting my breath back, taking inventory of everything, making sure nothing was broken. Then I got up, slow, and went inside and sat at the kitchen table. I called Kevin. He answered on the 4th ring. He sounded distracted. I told him what happened. I told him I was fine. But it scared me a little, being alone in the garage and going down like that. He said, "Oh man, Dad, are you okay?" And I said, "Yes." Just bruised. Just shaken up, he said. That's good. That's really good. Listen, I'm in the middle of something at work. You sure you're okay? I said I was sure. He said he'd try to come by that weekend. He didn't come that weekend. He didn't come the weekend after either. I didn't bring it up. I didn't want to be the kind of father who keeps score. I went to the doctor myself, confirmed the ribs, came home, iced it for a week. I handled it. I always handle it. That's what I do. In March, my neighbor Frank texted me. Frank lives 2 doors down. Been there since his kids were in diapers. We have coffee sometimes. He sent me a message that just said, "Ray, is this Kevin's wife? Someone forwarded this to my daughter and she thought it was your boy." There was a screenshot attached. It was Ashley's Instagram post. The photo was of a house, a real house, not an apartment, a 2-story colonial with a front porch and a yard and professional landscaping, the kind of fresh mulch that means someone hired out. There were people everywhere. 60, maybe more. Tables set up outside, string lights, a catered spread, everyone holding wine glasses. The caption read, "Home. Finally, truly home. We are so grateful for family. To the people who helped make this dream possible, we love you forever." There were hearts, there were comments, "So beautiful," and "Can't believe how gorgeous it turned out," and "You deserve every bit of this." I sat at the kitchen table and looked at that photo for a long time. The tag on the location was a neighborhood in Dublin, Ohio. Not an apartment complex. A neighborhood with street names and cul-de-sacs and homeowners associations. I went to Kevin's Instagram. His profile was private, but he had one post that was public, a reshare of Ashley's photo. His caption said, "Couldn't be more grateful for the people in our corner. Blessed beyond what we deserve." I looked at the date of the post. 9 months ago. If you've ever been erased from someone's story, if you know what it's like to realize you were written out without anyone telling you, leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Sometimes just knowing someone else understands it makes it possible to keep talking. I didn't call Kevin that night. I thought about it. I sat there in the kitchen, my coffee going cold, the refrigerator humming. Linda's list still held up with that magnet we brought back from Gatlinburg, and I thought about calling my son and asking him to explain to me how a man can cash $550 every month for a mortgage-free house and not mention it. But I didn't call. I waited 3 days. I wanted to be calm when I said the words. I didn't want my voice to shake. I didn't want to sound like a man who was hurt. I wanted to sound like a man who understood exactly what had happened. On a Thursday morning, I called him. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Dad." Casual. Easy. Like a man with no debts and no accounting to do. I said, "Kevin, I need to ask you something. Are you still renting that apartment?" A pause. Short but real. "We actually moved a while back," he said. "Better place. Closer to Ashley's office." I said, "When did you move?" Another pause. Longer. "Last summer," he said. "Last summer," I repeated. "Yeah. Do you own the house, or are you renting?" He was quiet long enough that I started to understand the shape of the answer before he gave it. "Ashley's parents bought it," he said, "as a wedding gift. We kept meaning to tell you. It just, things got busy." I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, "Kevin, I've been sending you $550 a month for 22 months. He said nothing. "That's over $12,000, I said. "For rent you haven't been paying for 9 of those months." "Dad, there was a housewarming party," I said. I saw the photos. 60 people, string lights, catered food. It wasn't a big thing. It was just, why wasn't I there? The question sat between us. I could hear him breathing. I could hear, somewhere in the background, the particular kind of quiet that meant Ashley was in the room. "Ashley's parents kind of organized it," he said. "It was their crowd, their friends. We didn't think you'd feel comfortable." I didn't feel comfortable. I heard those words, and I thought about 38 years on a job site. I thought about the way your hands look at the end of a career like that. I thought about Kevin, watching from the window, in the cold. I thought about Linda's list on the refrigerator. You didn't think I'd be comfortable, I said. Not a question. An observation. Dad, don't do this. Don't do what? Don't make it into something it isn't. It was just a party. It was my son's home, I said. That I helped pay for. That I didn't know existed. We're going to pay you back, he said. Ashley and I talked about it. We'll get you a check. I don't want a check, Kevin. Then what do you want? I thought about that question. What did I want? What a son can even give you when the thing you needed was for him to see you as worth including. I'll let you know, I said. And I hung up. I stayed at the kitchen table for the rest of that morning. I didn't pace. I didn't cry. I sat very still in the chair, and I let myself see clearly what I had been refusing to see for 2.5 years. The way Kevin had changed at every holiday after Ashley entered the picture. The way he started cutting conversations short. The way he introduced me at the wedding, my dad, Raymond, and then moved on, like naming me was enough. The way Ashley's father's 11-minute toast never mentioned the man who raised Kevin. The way the caption said, "Grateful for family," when the family picture didn't include me. It wasn't an accident. You don't forget to mention a house for 9 months by accident. You don't not invite someone to a 60-person party by accident. You decide. You make choices, one after another. And each choice tells the truth about what you value. The next morning I called my lawyer, a woman named Patricia who had handled Linda's estate. I asked her to schedule a meeting. I told her I wanted to update my will. I had drawn it up after Linda died, leaving everything to Kevin: the house, the retirement accounts, the small life insurance policy, all of it, for my son, because there was no one else and because I had assumed, the way you assume oxygen will be there when you breathe, that Kevin was the person I had always believed him to be. Patricia asked if I was sure. I told her I was. Then I called the real estate agent who had sold me the house 20 years ago. His son had taken over the business. I left a message. I want to be honest with you about something. I am not a vengeful man. I was raised by a man who told me that anger held past nightfall turns to poison, and I have tried to live by that. I didn't do what I did out of spite. I did it because I finally understood something at 67 that I should have understood much earlier. When you give everything to someone who has decided you're an embarrassment, you're not being generous. You're teaching them that you have no floor. You're telling them, with every sacrifice you make in silence, that you will accept any treatment because you're afraid of being cut off. I was cut off anyway. Just quietly. Just slowly. So slowly I almost didn't notice until I was standing outside a party at my son's house with 60 guests, in a photo I was never meant to see. I met with Patricia on a Friday. I sat in her office and told her what I wanted. She listened without interrupting. Then she walked me through it. Kevin's name came off the will. I set up a scholarship fund through the local electrical workers union, in Linda's name, for apprentices who couldn't afford the certification costs. Everything I had would go there. The house, the accounts, all of it. I told her that, too, I was putting the house on the market. 20 years of my life in that house. Kevin's whole childhood in that house. Linda's garden in the backyard, the one I'd been maintaining badly since she died because I kept it alive for the same reason I kept her list on the refrigerator. But the house was too big and too quiet and too full of a version of my life that was finished. I'd been in contact with my sister Barbara in Scottsdale for months. She'd been asking me to move closer for 2 years. I'd been saying not yet. It was time to say yes. I called Kevin on a Sunday evening. He answered on the first ring, which told me he'd been waiting, which told me he knew something was coming. "Kevin," I said, "I have some things to tell you, and I'd like you to listen before you respond." He said, "Okay. I've stopped the monthly transfer. There won't be another one." He started to speak. I held my hand up, even though he couldn't see it. Old habit. I've also updated my will. The house and the accounts are going to a scholarship fund in your mother's name. I'll send you the details so you know it's legitimate. I paused. And I'm selling the house. I'm moving to Scottsdale to be near Barbara. I've already talked to the agent. The silence on the other end was total. Then, "Dad." "What?" "You heard me. You're selling the house?" "Our house?" "My house, Kevin. It's my house." The same way your house in Dublin is your house. The one I didn't know about. Dad, I told you we'd pay you back. We're working on it. This isn't about the money. Then what is it about? His voice rose, and I could hear something behind it, not anger, but fear. The specific fear of a person who realizes that something they took for granted is moving. It's about 60 people drinking wine in your backyard, I said, and your father not being one of them. It's about 11 months of sending money to a house you owned free and clear. It's about your mother's funeral, when I stood next to you at the grave and I thought, at least I still have my son. And then spending 2.5 years watching you decide I didn't fit. That's not what happened. Kevin, tell me what happened then. Tell me clearly. He was quiet for a very long time. Long enough that I watched the sun finish setting through the kitchen window. Long enough that the room went from gold to gray. Ashley's family is different from us, he said finally. They have a certain way of doing things. And I didn't want to put you in a situation where you felt out of place. I was trying to protect you. You were protecting yourself, I said. Not unkindly, just accurately. You were protecting the version of yourself that fits into their world. The version that doesn't have a father with rough hands and a pickup truck who talks about football and used to eat lunch out of a cooler for 38 years. I stopped. I am not ashamed of what I am, Kevin. I'm sorry that you are. I heard his breath catch. I'm not ashamed of you, he said. But it came out small. Then explain the party. He couldn't. The same way you can't explain a photo with 60 people and no father in it. Some things don't have explanations that make them smaller. They just are what they are. Dad, please don't sell the house. Can you come up here? Can we sit down and talk about this? We're talking now. I mean in person. You and me. Please. You know where I live, I said. You have the address. You've had it for 32 years. I told him he could call me anytime. I told him I loved him. Because I did and I do, and that part doesn't turn off even when everything else changes. And then I said goodnight, and I hung up. He was at my door by 11 the next morning. I heard the knock and I already knew it was him. I finished my coffee. I walked to the door and opened it. He looked like he hadn't slept. He was in a sweatshirt and jeans. No Ashley visible, which surprised me. He'd driven an hour and a half alone. He looked at me and I could see him trying to figure out who I was now, this version of me that had finally said enough. Like a man looking at a piece of furniture he thought was one thing and discovering it was another. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped back. He walked into the house where he grew up, and he stood in the living room and looked around at it the way you look at a place when you know it's going to be gone soon. Then he turned to me. I'm sorry, he said. I'm telling you first, before I say anything else, I'm sorry. The party, the money, not telling you about the house, all of it. I'm sorry. I sat down in my chair. I gestured at the couch. He sat. I need to ask you something, I said, and I need you to answer me honestly. Was Ashley the reason you didn't invite me? He looked at his hands that are smooth, that have never held a wire stripper or a junction box. Hands that type on a keyboard in an air-conditioned office. Good hands. Hands I made possible. It was both of us, he said. She thought it would be awkward. And I went along with it. Because it was easier. There it was. The same thing every man who has ever hidden his father eventually admits. It was easier. Not crueler. Just easier. Easier than explaining me to her family. Easier than standing up and saying, the man who raised me will be in the front row, deal with it. Easier to let me fade than to hold the line. When your mother was sick, I said before she went, she asked me once if I thought we'd done a good job raising you. I said yes. I said we'd done everything right. I paused. I still think we did. I think we loved you so well that you never learned what it cost. You never learned that things can be taken back. Dad, I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because I want you to understand. That money I sent, every month, I want you to know what that was. That was me choosing you over a new water heater, over a trip I've been putting off since your mother died, over 100 small things I told myself could wait because my son needed help. I stopped, And you cashed those checks in a house you owned outright and you didn't once think to tell me. He put his face in his hands. His shoulders moved. I watched my son cry in my living room and I sat with it and I didn't move to comfort him because sometimes comfort is the thing that keeps a man from arriving at the truth. After a while, he looked up. "What do I have to do?" he said. "Tell me what I have to do and I'll do it." "There's nothing to do, Kevin. The papers are already signed. The house goes on the market next week. I move to Arizona in 6 weeks. And the will? The fund is set up. Linda's name is on it. Electrical apprentices in this city are going to have an easier start because of your mother. I'm at peace with that." He looked at me like I was someone he didn't recognize. Maybe I was. Maybe the man he thought I was the man who would keep sending checks, keep making smaller, keep accepting whatever he was given. Maybe that man had always been a misunderstanding. "You're my father," he said. "I am. I'll always be your father. That doesn't change." "Then why does it feel like you're leaving me?" I thought about that. I thought about how to answer a question like that when the real answer is, I'm not leaving you. You already left me. I'm just finally moving in the direction you pointed me. "Because you made room for everyone except me," I said. "Ashley's parents get Sunday dinners. Her mother calls you on Tuesdays. Her father was in 8 of the last 12 photos on Ashley's Instagram. And me, I got a transfer on the 15th of the month and a phone call every few weeks when you had a few minutes." I met his eyes. I decided I deserved more than that. Not from you. From myself. I stopped accepting the scraps and I'm going somewhere. I'm not a complication. Kevin was quiet for a long time. Then he said something I didn't expect. "Mom would have fixed this." "Yes," I said. "She would have. But she's not here. And I'm tired of pretending things are fine when they aren't. She was better at that than me. Always was." He almost smiled. The ghost of it. Anyway, he stayed another hour. We talked about his mother for a while. The way we never do anymore because it's easier not to. He told me things about the job, about the house, about things he and Ashley were figuring out. I listened. I made more coffee. I didn't soften the decision, but I also wasn't hard about it. There was nothing to be hard about. It was simply done. When he stood up to leave, he hugged me. A real hug, both arms. The way he used to before he grew up and learned to manage the distance between people. I held on for a moment and I thought, this is still my kid. This complicated man who made choices I'll never fully understand is still the boy who called me a superhero. Those things can both be true. "Call me," I said when he pulled back. "Not because you need something. Just call." He nodded. He said he would. Maybe he meant it. He walked out to his car, and I stood in the doorway and watched him go. The street was quiet. It was a Tuesday morning in March, the kind of cold that means spring is coming but isn't here yet. A dog barked somewhere down the block. A car passed. Normal, ordinary life. Moving right along. I closed the door and went back to the kitchen. I poured the rest of the coffee down the drain. I looked at Linda's list on the refrigerator. Grand Canyon, Ireland, cooking class, painting. All those plans she didn't get to keep. I took the list down. Carefully, because the paper was soft from 3 years of being held up by that magnet. I folded it once and put it in my shirt pocket. I was going to bring it with me to Scottsdale. I was going to put it somewhere I could see it. Then I sat down and I made my own list. It wasn't long. It didn't have to be. But it started with the Grand Canyon, because Linda wanted to see it, and I think some things you keep for the people you loved. And it ended with a cooking class, because I have been eating badly for 3 years, and I think Linda would say it's time. I didn't fix everything by walking away from it. Kevin and I still have a long road. Trust doesn't come back fast, and I'm not sure mine ever will. Not the same shape it was before. But I'm not angry. I want to be clear about that. I'm not driving to Arizona in anger or in bitterness. I'm driving toward something. Toward the version of my life where I still matter. Where I take up the space I've earned. Where I am not trimmed down to fit into someone else's picture of what a father should look like. I worked 38 years with my hands to give my son a better life than I had. And when he decided that life was too good to include me, I decided something too. I decided I was worth more than that. Not to him, To myself. I decided it late, maybe, but I decided it clearly. Some things you spend a lifetime learning. I learned this one at 67. Standing in my kitchen reading a party invitation I was never sent, looking at a caption that said grateful for family next to a photo that didn't contain my face. If you've ever had to choose between begging for your place and walking with your head up, you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what it costs. And you know that some things you can't put a price on, no matter how long you spent earning them, like your own dignity, that never goes on sale. If this story stirred something in you, if you felt invisible in your own family, I want to hear from you. Leave me a comment, tell me where you're watching from, tell me your story. And if you think I did the right thing, or if you think I was wrong, tell me that too. I'm 67 years old and I've been taking hard things for a long time. Subscribe to Father's Gentle Revenge if you want to keep hearing from me. There are more stories like this one. Stories about fathers who stayed quiet for too long and then decided, one ordinary morning, that quiet wasn't the same thing as fine. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere fast. Well, Scottsdale. But you know what I mean.